Yeah, that's the bass and Carl together on that.
And it's kind of Don't Worry Baby at this point.
Okay. Here come Carl's guitar lines right here.
I always knew you'd feel this way.
Okay.
So good.
And those are just little color accent things that are, go ahead.
All right, welcome to the In My Beach Boys Room podcast. I am Adam Schreiner, sitting here with Matthew Hartz, and today we are covering the Beach Boys Today album with special guest David Sanger. And we just had the conversation with him. It was great. We'll get into that here in a second. Let's get our social media stuff done here. So we have Matthew Hartz Music. You can find him on Instagram, obviously on YouTube, and then Facebook. You can just search Matthew Hartz. Those are the three main social media channels that we use. And, that's pretty much it. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff that helps grow the podcast. Really appreciate it. Also want to mention our sponsorship program that we started last episode. If you want to sponsor this podcast, you can just go to MatthewHartzMusic.com/sponsor, fill out the little form. In the last episode, we had talked about just doing it through PayPal, but since then we've had some sponsors, which we will mention some of their names here shortly. But we were learning, and so we added a way to sponsor through Venmo. That's on there. And then for those, we did get a request to send us a check, and that's totally fine. So if you would rather just send a check, shoot us an email, and that's just info@MatthewHartzMusic.com, and we can get you an address there if you just would rather, do it the old-fashioned way, which we totally understand, and we're more than willing to provide an address for you to send a check to. So it was so cool. We had a great response to the sponsors.
Thank you so much.
Acknowledge Jesse Cummins, Richard Harris, Jared R. There's just gave us the start of his last name. Michael Hoyt and Susie Tilley. Thank you so much. You are the reason why we're going to be able to keep this podcast going, and we can't. Any money that you sent was so greatly appreciated that
can't believe the generosity of some of our supporters. Thank you so much to everybody. You know who you are.
Yeah, and those that didn't want to be mentioned, we acknowledge you as well. So
yeah.
We also, there is a little space that you can write a suggested podcast topic, and some of you did, and we did. We are keeping those filed, and we're working through these albums right now, but definitely are going to keep those in mind once we get past this part. Okay, so before we get into David, you did have a special acknowledgement you wanted to say.
Yes. Big loss in Beach Boys world while we were off since the Christmas episode. Jeffrey Foskett, who's been a huge part of the Beach Boys world, a huge part of Brian's world. So much a part of both of those things. I don't know where they would be had he not been involved. He was just an amazing singer, an amazing musician. He was a great support to Brian. He was really, when he was working with Brian, Brian, when he released his Smile, and it was a long time, but
sure.
All through that stuff, Jeff was really his right-hand man, mm-hmm. the person that Brian leaned on for a lot of things, and a really close friend, and a lot of support besides musically. Let's just put it that way. But he was in the Beach Boys early enough in the early '80s to where he played in the band with both Dennis and Carl.
Oh wow!
And so he long history with the band, and man, his original music is unbelievable. But he just such a big contribution to the Beach Boys and the Beach Boys world. Brian Wilson, I just want to say rest in peace, and I got to meet him once.
Oh, cool.
Fantastic guy, and I'm sure he's just going to be missed.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah, so David
so now let's
Sanger, I
get-
want to
yeah.
talk to you about him. David Sanger is a 6-time Grammy Award-winning drummer, musician, songwriter,
Wow.
arranger, producer. He's from Austin, Texas, grew up in California. But I know of him because he started in the mid-'80s being the drummer for Asleep at the Wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in that job for 35 years. And that's when I became a fan of him, was way back in the 80s when Larry was playing with the wheel and everything. And so fast forward to this year, this last year, I was able to play about a half dozen dates because David will still come back and play with the wheel sometimes when the other drummers can't make it. And so it was a big thing for me to get to meet him. But I had even heard before that he was a big Beach Boy fan. And so I was excited about that when I did meet him and we had our conversation.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to happen.
No, you
at
told
some
me. I
point,
remember when you called me on the road, and you're like, I got the perfect guy to get, and today is his favorite album. So,
yeah, that was the other thing
yeah.
is when we were doing these tunes and as we were getting ready to go this last, or when we were heading into this phase of it, we got to get David to do the Today album. So
yeah, and here's the conversation with David. It turned out so good. He is such a good conversationalist, and he's funny. It was such a good episode to record.
I'm sure
So much
folks
fun.
will enjoy it.
I hope you enjoy it. Here it is. All right, let's welcome David Sanger into the In My Beach Boys Room podcast. Thank you so much, David, for coming on today. So happy to have you. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you guys, your room is nice and tidy, boys. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
We cleaned it up just for you.
I saw a dirty sock under the bed, but
We've left things in the background before, coffee mugs and stuff like that. And so
Yeah,
we've learned,
yeah.
we got to keep it, especially when we have a guest over. So anyway, Matthew, let's talk to David and
I want
get
to
know
ask
David
David a
little
couple of questions real quick before we get started on the Today album. How many years with Asleep at the Wheel, David?
35 years. 35 years.
Wow.
30.
With with little breaks in there, but from start to finish.
What year
That's
did
what
you
it was.
start?
1986.
Okay, and that explains why that's.
I was born in 1987, so there's
That was a good year.
That
was a good
87,
year for me.
I think 87 is a good year for a lot of people.
Well, he's been the drummer in the band ever since I really became a fan about that time.
Okay.
And he also subsequently every once in a while he'll play with the wheel. And this last year I had the honor of playing I think about a half dozen times with David and had a blast and I had actually found out from another member, Jenny Mack, who's also a big Beach Boy fan. She had told me that David was really into the Beach Boys. And, I hear that a lot. And, and then when sometimes I'll meet somebody and they'll kind of, sort of, but boy, when I met David, when we finally played a gig and we talked about the Beach Boys, I knew that he would be somebody that would be a lot of fun to talk to the Beach Boys about. And I also found out that his favorite albums are Today and Surf's Up. So
Nice.
it worked out just perfectly for this
I love Surf's
episode.
Up. And recently I've loved it today going through this music. I was shocked by how good some of this music is. But we'll hold off. We'll get into that.
We're all
shortly.
brothers from a different mother
Yeah.
here. I want to ask David, obviously you have your career in music that you've done and attached to swing and jazz and a lot of other genres. But what's your Beach Boy story about? And by the way, David comes to us from Austin, Texas today, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Chilly Austin, Texas is not what you boys are used to, but
We had 18 for our high yesterday.
Yeah, and
wow,
yeah, about what 3 inches of snow when I woke up this morning.
not like that. Yeah, it wasn't like that, but I did have to drip my pipes, guys. So
Oh.
that's something. Well, my Beach Boys story is I was raised in Southern California. I was born in '61. So, the Beach Boys growing up were present. We knew the music and we knew it was like California music, but in those days, music would come and go very quickly. So the first band I was in was an oldies band. We started in 1972, and it was an oldies band. So we didn't really have the gap,
Yeah.
But the first music I started listening to, like that wasn't like top 40, was music from the 50s and then the 50s and 60s. So I got into the Beach Boys, and I really, the first group that I had several records from was the Beach Boys. And you couldn't, like, I remember calling a radio station saying, hey, can you play I Get Around? And they're like, and this is in 73, I don't know. And they're like, I don't know if we have that one. It's like, it was gone. All that early Beach Boys stuff was completely gone.
All the albums were out of print too, with the exception of a couple of little things. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I remember going to a party and seeing the Beach Boys' greatest hits one with "Get Around" on it, and I was like, "Oh my God!" It was like treasure.
Yeah, anytime somebody had a record you didn't have, that's
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can hear it. I could, So getting, and I acquired some Beach Boys records, and they were a lot of them were, like there was a gray one. Anyway, I kind of can go into that, but so the second concert I ever saw was the third concert I ever saw was Beach Boys with Joe Walsh opening.
Oh wow!
Now, it was a general admission concert, and I've got
this. The Badman book. Yep.
The Badman book, and it's not in there. And I was looking last night. I was like, maybe I missed it the first time, but I saw like a thing that says undocumented concerts, and it must have been one of those because it's not there. But it was a general admission show, and I was 11 or 12 or something, and you got squished. I got squished in the crowd. I got picked up off my feet. And so anyway, my parents had given me the Beach Boys concert record, the one that came out in the 70s.
Uh-huh. The one from 72 and 73 is what those shows are from. Yep.
Right. So I knew that record, but when I went to the show, I was like I'd never been to a show with like an opening act before. So Joe Walsh is up, and I'm like, I don't really recognize these songs. And he played Rocky Mountain Way, and I was like, oh, I know that one. And then he stopped, and I was like, well, what's this? And then the Beach Boys came out, and I knew all those songs.
Oh,
so
cool.
As a kid, it took me a while to kind of like, and then Endless Summer came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
I had access to all those songs I didn't have access to before.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Yep.
Yeah, so like the version of Surf and Safari, I used to go to a used record store, and they had all these bootleg records, and I think the version of Surf and Safari I had was a bootleg because it kind of like wobbled. It wasn't centered. It's like it sounded horrible.
Yeah.
And so when Endless Summer came out, I had access to all those great songs in a quality setting. Mm-hmm. And then Spirit of America came out. And that's when I started getting into like weird Beach Boys songs, what I consider like sort of the off-brand Beach Boys songs. Like the stuff that wasn't a hit, the stuff I had never heard, Salt Lake City, that's like sort of my example of like, Spirit of America.
That's where I heard, I'm just going to interject a little bit. I got Endless Summer for Christmas in 74 when I was 5. And the next year, some of our family friends got Spirit of America. I never had the Today album until college, but my familiarity with the Today album, because most of side 1 is on Spirit of America, and then the only one of the ballads is Please Let Me Wonder's on there too. But I think both you and I, a lot of our familiarity with these tunes, and I've been telling Adam and our audience about how important Endless Summer and Spirit of America were in 74. They reinvented the Beach Boys. They made them legendary.
Yeah, I went from calling the radio station and saying, can you play I Get Around, to, I don't know if I even have that, to the Beach Boys, the Endless Summer. Everyone knew the Beach Boys. Now everyone, it was like back in the forefront. And I was like a fan before, and I'm like, well, yeah, but you know, so I'd seen them in concert, and I felt like I was like cutting edge.
Yeah, you were.
It's
You
funny.
were.
It's funny because but I was not. I had no understanding of any of that Warner stuff. Nothing until I got to high school. I got
And when
the
he says Warner, he's talking about albums starting with Sunflower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I went to high school and I got the greatest hits on the Warner Brothers greatest hits. So that had Surf's Up on it. It had Friends on it. It had, it had some weird stuff that wasn't on the radio. It wasn't available. It was like, it wasn't on Endless Summer. It wasn't on the radio. It's like, well, what is all this?
Yeah, and
So-
it's funny how this lines up perfectly with like when Matthew told me all about Endless Summer and Spirit of America. He's almost describing exactly what you were saying. Like the just how it changed.
And when
it's kind of crazy how his story lines up perfectly with what you said.
But it's exactly with the more progressive music coming after the stuff that's featured on Endless Summer and Spirit of America is almost the same thing. I mean, when I heard it later on, and when I first heard Surf's Up and Till I Die and stuff like I was in a coma for 2 months, what's this? And where, anyway, I can't, okay, keep going on your story, David.
So that's sort of my, so I had like one of the records I was going to tell you, one of the records I had in high school was it was a gray double record. Mm-hmm. It had the Beach Boys concert, one album, and then like a greatest hits thing.
Right. That's one of it's a Pickwick. It's on the Pickwick label. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was like, so I knew that. So graduation day to me was like I was the only kid in my school who knew this song. So when we graduated, I would like teaching it to all my buddies. It was like, but it was like I was a club of one, liking this stuff. So that was sort of my basic Beach Boys knowledge until about, it was probably about 10 years ago or something. I went to my brother-in-law's house who was in an indie band like in the 90s, so I guess those guys were like the indie bands in the 90s were all heavy into Pet Sounds. Mm-hmm. Then when the first Pet Sounds re-release came out.
Yeah, 92,
that's the first time,
91 or 92.
First time I heard Pet Sounds.
Wow.
Never heard it before because the cover was so bad. I never wanted to listen to that record. And he's saying, my brother had Beach Boys Today. I never listened to it because the cover is like horrendous. It's like, what? Why would I listen? Why would I listen to this record? And everyone's like, it came out and when they re-released it, I was like, everyone's like, oh, Pet Sound. It's like, then I listened to it. And like, to me, I always knew God Only Knows because of the live records I had. And because there's a great thing where Carl introduces it and he said, this is my favorite song that Brian wrote. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I should really kind of pay attention to the, So I listened to that and I was like, Caroline No to me was like, oh, what is this? Loved it. And so I listened to that. Okay, so that's kind of was the end of my kind of schooling until about 10 years ago. My brother-in-law had this Badman book.
Okay.
And I went to his house, I picked it up, and I started reading it. And I was like, oh my God, this is mind-blowing. So I started reading it and listening to all the records along with the reading of it. Mm-hmm. And then I was deep. I got as many books as I had a stack of books like this. I read like 10 books. I've got the Wilson Project book. I've got.
I picked that up in Austin last summer. I found it, and I didn't have it. McFarland is the pink copy.
No, it's a gray. It's
Okay,
like a gray.
okay, yeah. Anyway.
And I just was like reading and reading and reading. I was like, Mike Love was coming to town. I bought his book, stood in line. I met, Jim Gershio.
Mm-hmm.
He would come to wheel gigs. I had met him before, and then I met him again, and I'm sitting there on the bus. I told you this, I think. I'm sitting on the bus listening to him talk to Ray, and then Ray like looks at me and goes, "Okay, Steiner, you get one question." It was like, I was like, so I met Mike Love, I met Jim Gershio. It's like, and it was, so that's sort of my Beach Boys story.
I'm curious,
Ray told me he met Carl once, and I was wondering if that was in connection with Jim Garcia.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I think I did tell you this, that the guy who signed Asleep at the Wheel to Capitol was the same guy
that signed the Beach Boys.
Signed the Beach Boys.
Nick Venet.
And Nick Venet. And I don't think the Wheel guys knew it.
Mm-hmm.
He may have known it, but it didn't register with him at all. And when I found that out, just kind of like in passing, and I was like, Nick Venet signed you guys? He's like, yeah, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's like, what I said too.
It's like John Hammond signing you.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So anyway, it was really reading that, this
Badman book.
This Badman book that really started me like a deep, deep rabbit hole. And I just couldn't, I was like reading everything. I wouldn't stop until I read everything that I could find on it.
I can't ever let you down here in the Beach Boys sanctuary, because I don't know how many books are there down here, Adam.
Well, and I'm starting to.
You got to look over at Dennis's section. There's 5 books proper just on Dennis these days. A full length.
Really,
yeah, just.
And I think I honestly think that Beach Boys content it's endless. Like, I just think there's just so much that has been done, and then you want to bring in the musical aspect of it as well, where you could get into each album. It really is almost endless.
What David was able to find out, just like I did over the course of my whole life, really, though, basically, is you get to we slowly discovered this amazing body of work.
Yeah.
That it's like you only know about little bits and pieces of it until you're exposed. Yeah. And it's so mind blowing, the things that come out of it. It's just like, it just raises the hair. It's just even researching this record, because this is such a special record, and as much as I've studied the Beach Boys, I found out things about some of my favorite tunes because I took such a deep dive this weekend, that are, it's endless like that. It keeps giving to me like that.
It's almost like you could make a podcast out of it or something.
Yeah. But who would do that?
Yeah,
Well, if David says that pretty much the end of your Beach Boy story.
That's pretty much it.
So I'm going to say that David qualifies as a musician who's into the Beach Boys, and I think one of the first times, not just into, but really into it, one of the first episodes we talked about what my goal with this thing was, bringing attention to the Beach Boys, but also to bring, I meet so many musicians who are passionate about the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Not many as passionate as David, but that's a thing to me, to try to get people to understand how many musicians really, when they are exposed to it, how blown away they are by the stuff, because it's deep. Yeah. And so I guess with that, or we'll never be done with this thing. I'm going to give some quick album context on the Today album. Okay, it was released on March 8th in 1965. It went to number 4 on the U.S. charts. Quite a bit on the album had already been done in 64. As a matter of fact, When I Grow Up, backed with She Knows Me Too Well, those were all recorded in like August or summertime. Don't Hurt My Little Sister was recorded during the Christmas sessions.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So, and Dance, Dance, Dance was a single in, I think, late November right after the concert, the 64 concert album had come out and was number one. Then Dance, Dance, Dance comes right out after it. So they had all these tunes, right? But then let's say January of 65, they're hard at work at finishing up the album. It's the first album after Brian's big breakdown that he had in December of 64, where he famously said, I want to stay home and write the tunes, and you guys go out on the road. And man, if this is the first result of that decision, I mean, it was, it's a good one, because for Brian, it's a revolutionary album in both composition and arranging and production. It's truly the point where Brian does integrate jazz into rock and roll. Okay. It's, those tunes on side 2 those are some complicated ideas and progressions on those tunes. I mean, you got to go deep, and there's not just one line going on. There's like 8 of them, and they all make sense, and they don't get in the way of each other, is the amazing thing. This is the first album where I've talked ad nauseum about the group they call the Wrecking Crew, just the session musicians from L.A. that were, on so many records, but people think from some documentaries that they played on all the Beach Boys records. This is really the first album where they do a lot of it. And it's only really 65 and 66 and part of 65 and 66 where the Wrecking Crew was really involved with Brian's deep music. And sometimes it's because the Beach Boys were available. Sometimes it was because they weren't. I don't know if that made sense. No. but it's and with that being said, guess what? There's tunes on this record, and they're going to surprise you that the Beach Boys are the backing band for.
Oh, okay.
And so anyway, I want to say that lyrically, this is one of the albums where Brian pretty much got sole credit on a lot of them, and Mike was awarded credit in the mid-90s, and so got retroactive credit on a lot of the tunes. I'll talk about the obvious ones, but a lot of the tunes are really autobiographical in nature, and they really do reflect Brian's mind and thinking, and I've hypothesized before, and other guys have too, that maybe these were tunes that Brian had pretty much finished, and maybe Mike came in and did a little bit of lyrical alteration. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them he dang sure did the whole, a lot of it never got credit. But I want to say that the lyric ideas are basically, I think they sound like Brian to me. And musically and lyrically, this album is a signpost pointing directly at Pet Sounds. Sure. Not that Pet Sounds doesn't go through summer days too, but this is where we get the gestation of Pet Sounds. For me personally, on a lot of days, this is my favorite Beach Boy album.
Wow.
I was introduced, like we said earlier, to most of it from the Spirit of America compilation. And so I've heard a lot of the fast songs early, and Please Let Me Wonder, which I always loved. But the other tunes were not until it was re-released on the Twofers in the early 90s. So Kiss Me Baby, She Knows Me Too Well, In the Back of My Mind, those things were, and you talk about, I said, Till I Die, Put Me in a, those songs, Kiss Me Baby, I don't think I was even the same person for like months, or after digesting something like that. It really was amazing. It was what I remember. I was married the first time, and I remember picking up the twofer because we were on the road from Nashville to Boise, and I stopped at a place in Wyoming because I knew it was coming out that day, and I remember putting it in the car, and just my mind was just absolutely blown. So anyway, there's context on the album. Shall we get into the album, David?
Into each track?
Might as well.
Hey,
while we're young, boys.
Let's talk about Do You Want to Dance? David, you want to start?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, so I knew the Bobby Freeman version first.
From 58. It was a hit. He wrote it, and he had a hit with it in 1958.
Yeah, because I had like a K-Tel record, Greatest Hits of Rock and Roll. I think it was on there. So I knew the song. And so when I first started listening to Beach Boys today, I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. So it is not my favorite on the record. However, on going back and listening to it, my feeling on this one is last night I was like, well, it's been a long time since I heard the Bobby Freeman version. So I listened to that and I was like, man, there is nothing to this song. So I think my feeling on Do You Want to Dance, it's Brian, as the kids say, flexing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
It's
I like
him
that.
saying, so, and I found out that Dennis sang it. I just found that out last night.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, that's one of my favorite.
didn't know
He's
that.
such a great lead vocal.
So it's like, okay, so it's probably Dennis saying, I want to sing this song, or Brian saying, hey, Dennis, you sound good when you sing this song. Let me show you what I can do with it, as a spoiler alert for what I'm going to do with Sloop John B in a year.
Yeah.
Because he takes this nothing chord progression, no harmonies, nothing. And he takes there's that do you want to dance? That part only appears one time in the original version at the end.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a throwaway verse kind of thing at the end. So he takes that, adds, and he's like, basically to me, it's like, hey, Phil, look what I can do.
I was going to get there too.
Yeah.
All that stuff that you do, I can do too. That's my feeling. On
Okay.
Do You Want to Dance.
I like it.
Adam, I want to hear what you think on Do You Want to Dance?
Yeah, so this one was included in the album that I grew up listening to, that like Greatest Surfer Hits album that I had. I always liked it, which is kind of weird because a lot of the Beach Boys songs that are repetitive like this, as far as like lyrically goes, they kind of get on me a little bit. Like I'm just like, okay, at some point halfway through the song, I've heard enough. But this one, it doesn't I don't know, it doesn't rub me like that. I enjoy it. And then also, I think it's a great way to kick off the album.
Oh.
I think the fact that it's their first song on the album, I think it really is a good way just to start, get you, I don't know, kind of get you amped up a little bit, a little pumped up, because it's, it's kind of a dancey song,
This is a big one for me.
Yeah.
I love this. I've always loved Dennis right out of the gate. It's powerful and driving. For me, when summer's coming on, when spring is when I feel the first hint of the warmth I'll put this tune on and roll the windows down. I want to say something real quick here about mono versus stereo. These things were all cut in mono. And this song in particular, but all of these early to mid 60s albums, it really makes a difference. The stereo versions that they've released have really done something to the vocals and spread them out. And there's something about that mono. It just really compresses the vocals and makes them super tight. And there's a magic in there that I really feel like, I know why Brian did that. And he did, we've talked about the different reasons that he did it. But the stereo mixes that do come out later are great for hearing the instrumentation that we never heard the depth of what was in these backing tracks. I mean, they're so dense, but on these mono versions, Brian's got all that stuff there for support and maybe implied ideas, but a lot of the stuff is not real present in the production stuff. So that's kind of the mono versus the stereo thing, and it's really evident on this tune. Carl's guitar here, because this is Carl and Brian on the piano with the Wrecking Crew.
Okay.
So it's Carl's on playing the 12-string, probably the Rick, plugged in directly to the board when he did some of the overdubs. But I love his line, and we talk about the 12-string guitar, both acoustic and electric, being a huge part of not just this album, but the Summer Days album, the Party record, and Pet Sounds and Smile too. But this is the point where Brian really kind of got in love with that sound and started using it a lot. But I love Carl's lines, the color lines that he has in here. There's a bootleg called Long Lost Surf Songs that brings out a whole different aspect of the song. There's a Dan Electro 6-string bass line that is totally buried on the original version that it would just knock you out. I was going to try to find it and show us, but and as far as David talking about Brian reinventing it, he absolutely did. And he put an instrumental bridge in there with just some great chord changes that was never part of the original song, and just really gave it some depth. And you said this is what this is Brian again playing Phil Spector, and trying to do what he could with the wall of sound. I mean, it sounds like a Spector production on the track. And then last thing I want to say is just Brian's stratospheric note on the
on the
very
choruses?
last the very last one going into that the fade. He's just up on like an F5, I guess is maybe what. Just nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, that one will probably be the longest tune we have to discuss because it had a lot of notes on my thing. But how about "Good to My Baby," David?
Well, good. Let me find my. To me, "Good to My Baby." I'm not. I'm a side 2 guy on this record.
Me too.
But to me, like that cycling through, like those chord changes, kind of cycling through. I don't know a lot of theory, but I do know when I hear something, I'm like, are we staying in the same key here? It's like a lot, like the same thing where you're talking about that instrumental bridge on Dance, on Do You Want to Dance? It's the same thing. It's like, are we staying in the same key no, I think we're leaving. No, now we're coming back.
Yes, hang on one second, David.
Yeah.
You're exactly that you brought up a great point, and I had the perfect pick for that guitar. So David brought up something about this, and I wanted to, the trade-off between Brian and Mike, which that's a big part of this album too, especially on the faster tunes. They're trading and sharing the lead vocal, and that juxtaposition of their vocals is really cool.
So who is who's that "Good to My Baby"?
That's part? Mike.
That's Mike.
That's Mike.
That's been stuck in my head since I've been analyzing this album. That line has been stuck in just playing over and over in my head.
Yeah. So the riff is really cool too, and this is Carl and probably one of the other. And then they. So I love that riff. It's a really infectious cool little deal. But what he's talking about with the chords, it's in C to begin with. Some got dun, 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 4 to 5, and then C. Dun, 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 dun. Then we go to A minor, which is the relative minor of C. But it's actually the 2 of we're doing a key change to G here. Down, then to D, then to G, which is 1 now, and then to 6. And then 2, and then 5, and then 1. And then 3 major or 3 dominant. And the chorus is now still, G's mine, still G. Good to my baby, G. And then the E minor. And then the, no, she's happy with G. And then we go to a sharp 5, and then a truck driver modulation back to C. Some guys, it's just crazy.
So I've heard you say modulation before. What's truck driver modulation?
That's when you just jam it into gear because you're not given any
no subtlety at all,
and no 2-5-1 going into the modulation. It's just like on this beat we are jamming it back into the key of C. And so
I've never heard that term before, but I like it.
The interesting thing here is there's no guitar solo. And there's no guitar solos on a few of these tunes on here.
Yeah.
People are thinking, did they run out of time or did it? But to me too, Brian's always been a guy of the riff is the star of the show, and that riff plays all the way through that solos, but it's really repetitive. It's just basically the C and the F. Their intonation on the singing, especially on the very end, and I think it's even Brian on a note, gets a little bit loose in the end of this one. So sometimes I got to be a little critical.
Oh my God, I'm reading that book, the Badman book last night, and going, there is no time to sleep. They're just cranking this stuff out, cranking it out. How could it sound as good as it did?
I don't.
It's insane.
The amount of we've talked about the amount of records. Surf and Safari was released in August of '62. Okay, and then you realize okay, so let's just start. This is January of 1965. That's not even it's like 2.5 years or
and in the space where they started recording this record and they released it, they released 2 other records.
Oh,
they released like the Christmas record and the live record.
Yeah.
then it's
finished
like,
it up, and then
yeah. It's like, oh my God. And the time frame between what was it? What was this? Oh God damn. Sorry.
That's all right.
When I grew up to be a man, it's like we recorded it on Wednesday and released it on Friday. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that was
It's
all in August of '64. Yep.
2 weeks from the moment when they started recording it till it was released.
I know.
It's like, so
it was
a
manic.
little loose vocal, and I can't remember what song it is. I've got my little Beach Boys playlist, and there's one song on there where it's like there's something in the fade out where somebody just plays the wrong chord.
Yep. I'll bet you.
And it's like, ship it. Let's go. We're done. You know, it's not going to be a single. Forget it.
There's mistakes on some of my favorite Beach Boy tracks. You know, so did you want to say something about "Good to My Baby"?
No, I didn't have a lot on this one. I was just curious on who was singing that one part. That was the only thing, and you guys answered that question. So,
well, let's go into "Don't Hurt My Little Sister." Adam, what do you have to say about "Don't Hurt My Little Sister"?
I loved the music on this one, but I thought it was an interesting topic to sing about.
God, I was hoping we weren't going to have to get into that.
But yeah, I mean, I love the music. Like, you know, if you really focus in on just what's happened musically, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I just thought the topic was kind of like,
well, the
awkward.
topic is, this is when, 1963 is, Brian started living with the Revels. And this is reportedly a line. This is not when he had his relationship with the oldest one, Diane, later on in the 70s, basically. Maybe it started in the late 60s, but it was a line that, he was starting to date Marilyn. Some people even think it was about the youngest sister, Barbara. Yeah. But it was a line that she said to him, "Don't hurt my little sister." And he ends up marrying Marilyn, right? Okay. And so
he listened.
The cool thing about this tune is it was actually given to Spector to begin with and was considered for the Ronettes. But then Spector he was always kind of letting Brian worship him and then take the air out of his sails, and he ended up giving it to the Blossoms, and he turned it into a public service announcement that they did for a civil rights thing called "Things Are Changing for the Better, Things Are Changing." I think that's how it went. This here is the Beach Boys plus a small amount of the crew. There's a couple of extra guys on it. This was one I was familiar with because of the twofer. I didn't hear it till I was in college, but I remember still hearing, and it might be a Rick, but it might be a Fender 12. I love the way the guitar line sounds and just feels. And you tell me that would sound way weird on anything but a 12-string. It has to be a 12-string guitar, This is also the first song, and I figured this out before I ever read it. This is where the California Girls chorus idea comes from.
Oh, interesting.
So we're in beat. So what happens in the chorus when he says, "Don't hurt my little sister"? It's 1-4. Then just move back a whole step to the key of A flat. Do the same thing. 1-4. Don't hurt. Move back another whole step. And that's kind of Truck Driver there. And I love the chords going into the "Why does she love to da 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 da?" It's just it's a great tune. There's no solo again. It's just changes. But again, that riff is the star of the show on that tune. What do you think about that tune, David?
Yeah, I mean, once again, like cycling that chorus cycling, I was like, are we changing keys again? What's it doing? It's like all that stuff is like where Brian Wilson was like, I think this is where I'm really hearing it. Like this era, all of a sudden, I'm hearing him do these things where it's like taking you in and out of where are we? Where are we going?
And I think he's doing it on purpose to give it a.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also, we haven't touched on this, but theoretically, this is this first Weed album.
Yeah.
This is where he,
Yeah.
when he first-
so
First started
he's first started
partaking.
smoking. He's first smoking weed, and it's like, hey man, what if I do this? What if I do that? That's cool. It's like, to me, it's like sometimes you need to like relax in order to say that's okay.
Yeah.
He's so yeah, that's the subject matter is always like, to me, it's like, okay, that's all right, but like that the chords of the chorus, I really do like in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I love the feel. I love the tone that they get on that guitar on that little riff. There's something bell-like about it that just really gets me. I'll tell you, then we go on to When I Grow Up.
Yeah. So what's the instrument?
Right.
What's the instrument on this one?
Okay, well, yeah, that's a harpsichord.
Okay.
And Brian overdubbed that because this is the Beach Boys playing on here, and guess what? It's even old Dennis on the drums.
I was going to say, okay, to me, first of all, this is an outstanding track. Everyone sounds great. The subject matter, the way it's presented, it's very young Beach Boys, but done in, it's always affected me, this song. The wondering what I'm going to be like, the counting the years. It's like,
so
it's very
cool.
effective. The effect of counting the years is always like, oh God, it goes very quickly.
I remember thinking that too. Yeah,
It's such a creative thing to do in a song, I thought.
Yeah.
It's
It's
so
like,
original.
I'm starting very young, but by the end of this one chorus, I'm not young anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, but the drums on this, I was like, it's got to be Hal Blaine. Until I read the book last night, and I was like, well, wait a minute, he's not listed as a credit, because the reason, and I don't know if you want to play this or not, but the drums are backwards on this, on the verses.
Right.
What does that mean? What do you mean backwards?
Well, just
okay, so normally what they call a backbeat would be on 2 and 4, the beat 2 and 4. So when I grow up to be a man, right? That's what normal, if you say, okay, play this song. But the drums start on 1, 2, and 1, 2, and. Okay, so it's this like bump, bump, 3, 4, da da, bump, bump, bump. Dun, 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 which is completely backwards. And the snare drum is on 1. So, and then on the choruses, it comes, just kind of straightens out a little bit, but it's very unusual. I mean, I would never do that.
Well, the session tapes, they took 37 takes on this. And it was good. And Dennis was really frustrated with himself, and Chuck Britz is sitting there encouraging him, and Brian's telling, but it was all kind of their and I was just blown away when I found out that, I just figured it was something really inventive that Hal had come up with, or maybe
very Hal Blaine.
Yeah.
It's a very Hal Blaine kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The chord on the front. And I sat down at the piano last night and I said, well, I think I know about what it is, but it is so ambiguous in defining it that I was like, how would I even explain this chord? And
you mean the vocal chord at the beginning?
No, the chord behind that, when I grow up to be man, it is an insane. We're in the key of A flat, so it's kind of it's related to like an F minor chord of some sort, but it's one that I've talked about with other Beach Boy music theory guys, and we're all said, but that's the weirdest chord in the world. But the cool thing about it is too, I never knew that Brian was the guy that played the harpsichord on it, and he overdubbed the harp. I always thought that was one of the session keyboard guys, that did that, and he struggled a little bit with that too, on the session tapes too. So and then Al's playing bass, which he does on a lot of the stuff when the Beach Boys are playing. There's a great bass line you can't hear on the record. Is that dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. There's a descending line in there that I don't know, for years I couldn't hear it. I don't know if it was the the version I was listening to or what, but I also like that harmonica stab that comes in every once in a while. It's just a crazy little.
I don't even know. I don't even know these things.
I did.
when
Yeah.
I'm-
Well, in the line, there's that line too, that won't last forever. That's pretty signature, beautiful Beach Boy.
Oh, I love that. Mike sings
Yeah.
"Won't Last Forever,"
Yeah.
and then
Oh.
Brian, "It's kind of sad," and it just.
That-
always. I
yeah,
remember
that
from
one
the
hits.
very
That
beginning,
hits.
that tag
Yeah.
when I was little, even just like, oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. That it's got a feel, and to me, this song. It's like Brian's lyrics. I'm not. They're hit and miss, and it's always just kind of like I feel like he's just kind of like putting stuff in there on this record, but this song, it like works in that innocence, and yet it's it's like very it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
This one, the warmth of the sun, like there's certain
Well, and I think
times
Mike
it
ended up
works.
getting credit on this one too, and of course he was the lyricist on "Warmth of the Sun" too. So
Yeah.
I think I can hear Mike's hand in this "When I Grow Up" a little bit, even though he wasn't originally credited.
yeah.
So now we've got Ronda,
Good old Help Me Ronda.
which
Okay.
is I'm going to go first here just because this is probably one of my least favorite thing on this. This is not the hit version. This was the album
Yeah.
version without the H, and it's the Wrecking Crew along with Carl again. But the production is so muddy. And it is, and then it's a weird production. Even some of the vocals that Mike and Dennis are sounds like they got, and the volume surges on
That was one of my
the
questions.
Al Jardine talks about, because this is Al's technically his second lead, Christmas
You
Day.
mean are you talking about the outro things or the
on the outro where
the fade in, fade out?
Yeah. Yeah, and so
And so that wasn't intentional.
that was intentional.
It was
It's
intentional.
Yeah,
the worst, possibly the worst mixing decision. I've always hated that. Always since a
same.
little
Even as
kid.
as a kid too,
Yeah.
because this was
Yeah.
on the
Endless
album that I
Summer.
grew up with, too, and
Yeah.
the one that I grew up with, and I always, as a little kid, where I know nothing about music, I just was like, why? Why are you?
Well,
doing
we
this?
talk about how Endless Summer had the non-hit versions of "Help Me Rhonda" and "Be True to Your School."
So the
on
so
them.
the hit version, is that all fixed in the other version, or is it?
No,
it's the
Endless
same?
Summer still has the Today version of "Help Me Rhonda" on
Okay.
it. That's yeah.
And so I guess so what? Summer Days. That's the one where.
They put the hit single of "Help Me Rhonda" with an H this time out in between "Today" and "Summer Days," and then Bruce actually told Brian, said, "Put that damn thing on."
And is
the
that the
record, even though
same?
we
Is that
did
the
it.
same recording, or did?
No.
Okay, so it's a
new
whole different
recording.
one
Yeah.
with all that stuff fixed that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I A-B'd them today.
Oh,
the
okay,
two
nice.
versions.
Nice.
Because I was like, they're so similar, but I like Al singing on the first one. It's got more, and of course, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about the recording of the second one because it's not on this record, but it was during that thing where Murray's in there.
Murray's famous
Like,
tirade
how
where he
can
came
you,
in.
How can you record with this going on? But the first version, Al's got some like chutzpah. He's singing it and it's strong, but the muddy vocals on the first chorus, it's like, what is going on down there?
Yeah.
Horrible. but it's like it works. But it's interesting because the two different versions are not dissimilar.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a couple arranging things, it's tightened up a little bit, but
The bass line is much different, and then they added that.
yeah. Well, on the they
Later
they added,
on.
they added all that stuff, and the vocal is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's tighter, but it's interesting. I was picturing myself as a Beach Boy and Brian saying, "We're going to recut this song," and me going, "What? Why are we?" But
Well, you know why it was is because Terry Melcher, who was working with the Byrds probably by that time, but it wasn't for the Byrds. It was he wanted to put it out with somebody else, and Brian said, "Don't. I want to make it again."
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You're
Right.
like he saw the potential in it, but I think it was Terry Melcher came to him and said, I want to put this out, and he goes, "Don't, because I want to put it out one more time. Then you can put it out."
Okay. Well, I think he did better. Yeah, and it's got the guitar solo.
Well, yeah.
There's no guitar solo on the album
on
version.
today again. Yeah,
It's just empty space.
well, and then
like,
the hit single, obviously it did better because that was went to number one.
yeah,
Yeah. Those, let's get off of our least favorite version of "Help Me, Rhonda," and get into. It's just so thrilling to me to hear. I still remember when I was a little kid that coming out. This is one of the most driving Beach Boy tunes. This is the Beach Boys again, plus Hal doing some other percussion. But believe it or not, it's Brian on the bass here. Boom, 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 boom. Just
yeah,
and it just drives like crazy. Mike and Brian's singing drive. There's drive in the vocal.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something I talk often about in Beach Boy music is the polytonality of things. There's a lot of it on this record, but I love this little spot where we go to the 3 major dance, and then to 4 dance, and then actually the bass goes to 5 early, but the guitars and the rest of the band hang on the 4. So for a little while, we've got the 4 over the 5 till right at the very end, everybody resolves to the 5. So it's just another listen. That's the effect of it, and those are the little things that about Brian Wilson's music that has always affected me really deeply. And when I was a little kid, I didn't know why, and I certainly didn't know why I could never figure those chords out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this song, but before we leave this song, when I produce a record, occasionally there is a track where I say, I tell people it's like, you can't do anything to ruin this track. And Dance, Dance, Dance to me, it was never a hit in my world. It
got to number 8, when it got released.
But growing up with California Beach Boys, it was not fun. It was not Surfing USA. It
wasn't
not
that
like
well
one
known.
Of those.
Yep.
It wasn't that well known. I didn't know it at all until Spirit of America or the Pickwick. It was on the Pickwick too. And I was like, what is this song? It just jumps out. Everything about it is solid. It's like one of those songs where I thought, if I had recorded this song, it's like, you can't mess this up. You could do anything to this song. It's so strong, every bit about it. Mm-hmm. And that little chord, what is that when he goes da 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 da? It's like,
well, he modulates. They go to A flat in the middle of the third verse, and that's a truck driver thing. And you got to play the riff in that key too.
But what does it do? What does it do in a normal verse? What is a chord that it does in a normal verse?
They just then there's a one note variant right there that because Glenn Campbell's also on the track, and in the intro the guitar riff is like I played it at the beginning, but then in the middle of it, Glenn was making a half step different note choice in one spot, and it thought he was making a mistake, but Brian stopped him and said, "No, everybody do it the way Glenn's doing it in that one spot."
So when it goes, what
that's
is
just
that?
the modulation to A flat, and you're just doing the same riff.
That's just, it only does that on the third verse.
Yes. And then they finish the song out in A flat too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's I just love that song.
It's absolutely amazing. I can really hear Al in the on some of the dance, and he's singing with an attitude, kind of a punk attitude. This whole song, it's just kind of a lot of this song has got some attitude. Any thoughts, Adam, on Dance, Dance, Dance?
No, honestly, you guys have covered yes to everything you guys just said. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Side 2, here we go.
I was wondering. Okay, I wanted to know when side, because obviously the version what I listen to, I don't know where the side 1 and side 2 is. So this is when we go over to the side 2, which you both are more of a fan of this side 2. Correct?
But I love the songs on side 1 too. I mean, we just talked obviously by talking about it, but these songs on side 2, the originals are literal classics. Classics in the catalog. And it starts, here we go with Please Let Me Wonder. If anybody can find the deconstructed stuff that has just Brian teaching the guys the vocals over the track, it's out there on the internet. Oh my goodness gracious, what a beautiful thing that is. I do want to talk about the chords a little bit in this one, especially when we get to this D minor in the middle of the section where we're So there we've got G minor 7, and then kind of that's like a C over a B flat there, or a B flat with a C in the bottom, or we could think it's like a G minor 11. And then he starts the chorus with an F7, F dominant, which is really strange. Please.
Really, yeah.
And then we're going to D dominant, which is not diatonic here. And then G minor 7 again. And then maybe that G minor 11. And then F major 7. And back to that G minor. That's a really good example of Brian bringing jazz into the rock and roll and the polytonality of it's like those chords are they're all leaking into the next chord or resolving into the next chord, and it's for a musician it's so interesting, like we've talked to listen to.
Yeah. It's getting kind of Burt Bacharach-y, kind of like.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not. It's like very sophisticated, but very accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the magic of it. Is Brian had, even in the earliest parts of the catalog, there was difficult music that people would never dream that it had the complexity that it did, but it's because he made it. It didn't sound like it was that. Complex. The layperson could listen to it and resonate with it.
Yeah, and I think it's to me the strength, Brian Wilson's strength has always been sort of his arrangement and his composition of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like to make complicated ideas seem, very accessible, and of course the vocal arrangements are just like out of control. But then you hear, the lyric on this one, the title is like really kind of neat. Like just the title alone sets your mind going.
Yeah, totally.
It's because it's a very unusual concept. Let me wonder. Saying to somebody, because it's like basically, my concept of the song is like guys like, I wonder what it would be like, if we were together. But you would never say that to somebody. Mm-hmm. You'd only think it to yourself.
Yeah.
But they're saying it to somebody else, and it's like, it's very, it's an interesting image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this actually ended up being one of my favorites listening to this album, and the
and that's strange for Adam. Is not necessarily a ballad guy, but I told him, I said, just wait.
Yeah. I think what I'm realizing is I'm more like, I don't think I like their ballads kind of in their 70s and on stuff, because I find myself liking a lot more of the ballads on this earlier music, where this, and I don't know what's going on in the breakdown, but there's like this, like, I don't know if there's a term in music for it, but it's like, it's almost like the guitar and some other instrument are like,
it's an organ and Carl's guitar,
and they're kind of like answering each other.
Yeah,
that's so cool how that
take it.
Same thing with Don't Worry Baby. Don't Worry Baby.
Yeah.
That solo on that is just ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding.
That's one of the greatest.
So cool.
That's one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah.
I love, Carl's the one that says, I love you at the end.
Oh,
of
yeah.
this. And
Yeah, that's such a great
people
choice.
always want to know, that's Brian. No, I got news for you guys. It's Carl. I know. But Carl is playing with the Wrecking Crew again here. How cool is it? Carl's not even 20 years old. And he's always included on the sessions with the rest of the Wrecking Crew guys. And he has listened to, I think they were probably overdubbed, but especially on the verses. Maybe we could bring up Please Let Me Wonder and listen to the verse. And he has some great guitar lines on that. I think the Rick. Awesome. Yeah, that's the bass and Carl together on that.
And it's kind of Don't Worry Baby at this point.
Okay. Here come Carl's guitar lines right here.
I always knew it'd feel this way.
Okay.
So good.
And those are just little color accent things that are, go ahead and cut it. I guarantee, that sounds like something that Brian probably wrote, hummed, and told Carl to sing, or whatever. But who knows? It could have, Carl was in on a lot of that too. But anyway, we better, this be the longest podcast we've ever done.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know.
I'm setting records, baby.
I'm so young. We get the only cover on side 2, which is written by a guy named W.H. Tyrus Jr. And I don't know which band he was with that originally recorded this, but I was kind of unfamiliar with it. I think one of the Phil Spector groups did it, and that's the version that Brian was probably familiar with.
Right.
But it's it's just a doo-wop thing put in the middle of all these great tunes, and
it's like, hey boys, let's take it back to the old days. Let's do an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, and make the organ, give the organ just sounds so crazy, and it's on quarter notes, dun 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 dun, and I think it's a 6-string bass that they got tons of reverb on that thing, but it's just it's kind of like a psychedelic doo-wop type thing almost, and I like it. You can hear Dennis a lot in the vocal stack, and especially at the end he gets that "Can't Marry No One."
Oh, when
thing.
they start doing that, to me it's like when they do the end bit, it's like once again it's like a bit of a flex. Mm-hmm. It's like those chords at the end, those vocal chords at the end are like, how do you get people to, like in the middle of all this other stuff you're doing, it's like, how long would that take? That's the mind-blowing thing about the Beach Boys vocals. Yeah. It's like how they're just like, okay, come on in guys, and we're going to do these songs and we're going to sing these harmonies that are so close
and so hard.
So hard
to hear.
And we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done in 2 hours, or whatever. So Carl can go, to bed.
Yeah. Well, or by the way, you're going to come in and, the first half hour of the session is going to be me giving all of you your parts because I have them all memorized in my head. I'm going to teach every one of you guys, and you guys are going to all remember it in that amount of time. Even Dennis and all those guys, without any theory background or anything, singing these 4 freshman type, really dense chords that are just it is you bring up a mind blowing aspect of the whole thing. Is just how did they do that?
Yeah.
They were just gifted
and over and over, and when you hear about dissension in the group, anyone who's been in a group, it's like. When somebody starts belaboring a point, you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. Why don't we let's just play it? But everything you hear, and even during all the way up through Smile, there in those outtakes of Smile, it's like they're still doing it, but Brian's coming apart, but they're still in there doing these complex harmonies that are, I mean, I've never been a singer, I've never had to deal with that kind of thing, but I can't even imagine day after day doing those kind of things. It's like,
it would be so stressful mentally.
Yeah. No music. They're not reading it. They're not readers.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's all kind of orally
memorization too,
them.
by rote,
Yeah. Yeah. And that to me is just like, I can't even imagine being in that situation, but they just kept doing it. And there's very few Beach Boys songs. It's not till later, but there's very few where there aren't complex vocal arrangements going on at all moments of the song.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
I love it. And I think So Young is in E flat, and I talk about the crazy keys he writes in. Ronda's in D flat, and Grow Up was A flat. There's no, but anyway, I think So Young is in E flat, and it stays consistent for Kiss Me Baby. So we get into Kiss Me Baby,
which for me adds to my theory about Kiss Me Baby, which is basically, okay, we just did you an old doo-wop song.
Okay.
Now we're going to take this concept and we're going to twist it because it's still 6/8. It's the same key.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying, okay, now we're going to take the 6/8 ballad thing that you guys all knew back in the 1/6/4/5 whatever things, and now we're going to do something with it. And that's to me that's what Kiss Me Baby is to me.
Can we let's bring up another snippet. What I want to do is just let's just play the first part, and we'll go into where the unison vocals, because it's not just Brian and Mike, it's several of them singing the melody together, just one note, and then it breaks out of that. It gives the effect of Mike singing it though, and then it breaks out in Brian's first entrance on his. I'm so terrible on lyrics. I can't. Here we go. I love this too, though.
Please don't let me argue.
It's total doo-wop. The guys, that's lyrically, the same thing.
And then the oboe here.
Classic Hal Blaine right here.
That spot right there for Brian. Okay.
Yeah.
Cut it right here.
Yeah.
I have to. We've got to talk about this. Okay, in the chorus right there.
What's going on?
This thing. So we're in E flat, but A flat can't. B flat, and then E flat major 7, then C minor 7. Then we're gonna modulate up a minor third to the key of G flat, and we're gonna play a 2-1 in that key. Then we're going to go back to E flat and play a 2-1 in that key. And that is so crazy, man. So. And then when we go back to it, back to. Now, this goes to a straight C sharp major, like we're in the key of C sharp or D flat, let's call it, and we'll go 1/6, which is kind of the same movement we had with those other two chords, but then right here, we're going to go, let's turn it into B flat major, put a suspension on it, and then resolve to the dominant right there, so you still some of that stuff is just, it's just, I don't know where do you even if you're listening to the Four Freshmen all your teenage years and hearing crazy modulations and great chord changes, how do you write something like that?
I got one word for you. good weed. It's great. Yeah, this song to me is like, yeah, you take that doo-wop thing and then you just like, oh, whoa, man.
It's like an epic doo-wop.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it's something.
the production was, there's so many guitars, acoustic guitars, like there's a couple acoustic 12 strings maybe, and it's so thick. It's the Spectre thing again, but that oboe is really significant in my mind on this particular one.
Yeah,
We get into She Knows Me Too Well. If you're ready to move on, David.
I'm ready. I'm ready to move on.
Okay. Why don't you start?
To me, She Knows Me Too Well is a direct signpost to Pet Sounds. Everything about it is phenomenal except the subject matter. To me, it's like, I love the song so much and I wanted my wife to cut it until I really started listening to I don't listen to lyrics first.
Me neither.
And when I really started listening to lyrics, I was like, she can't sing this.
No.
She will never sing this.
Yeah.
It's a horrible song.
And the guy's an asshole.
Asshole.
And he might be
horrible.
Brian.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm able to distance myself from but the lyric, because and when I went to see him on the Pet Sounds anniversary thing, they sang this song. And I was like, I can't believe they're doing this song, because I thought I was the only one who liked it.
Oh,
You know,
I've got a lot of friends that love it. I love it. You know, this is the Beach Boys on the track again, which that surprised me. I thought this was a Wrecking Crew track for years, and I guess just because it was a dense ballad. But it's in it's in the key of B, but we never get a one chord until the chorus. And
Right.
I mean, you get C sharp, or C sharp minor, and then like A major 7, that's the second chord, and that's a magic chord. It doesn't sound like an A major 7 in that context, but back to C sharp minor, and then finally what sounds like a dominant 5, but then we go to, and then back to. And finally, we get to one there in the chorus.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's messing with your tonal centers, trying to make you guess where you are.
Yeah, it's such a gem. It's such like a lost gem. And it was a B-side.
Yeah, to When I Grow Up, I think.
Yeah.
And they recorded it. It was another one where I think they recorded a version early in the summer, and the day that they cut When I Grow Up, they also cut a new version of this.
Yeah. This was the song that to me was the sort of like, this was the crown jewel of this record to me. Always was. But lyrically, like I said, it's like kind of repugnant, but just tonally and sonically and everything, the way that his falsetto is, it's great.
Mm-hmm. It's when people talk about Brian's left hand being the keys to his chords, and Elton John talks about this a lot. I mean, this is a really good, the bass lines are always, if I want to figure out chords in a Brian Wilson song, I just pay really a close attention to the bass line, and that'll give me where I need to go for things, at least, because he's always right. Or for his ear, you know what I mean. If there's something that sounds strange to my ear, I'll usually find the connection. Amazing tune. And then moving on to In the Back of My Mind, which is another one that this one.
So it's kind of trippy.
This one is could be my favorite one on the record. She Knows Me Too Well is. Kiss Me Baby probably is. Please Let Me Wonder might be. Yeah. I mean, I love all of these tunes. This one is really, you talk about some ideas in it. I mean, I want to just go through the changes real quick. We're in F again. F major 7, and then G minor 7, and then B flat minor 7, and then we're going to go to an A or an F in first inversion, and then fully diminished chord here. This right here is a tie to God Only Knows. I feel like this is the first time he's used a fully diminished chord in a progression. Then we're to G minor 7 and A minor 7, and then here's the Please Let Me Wonder line again. But I like what we did this here. He does like a D minor 7 with a G in the bottom, so like a D minor and 11. Resolve to a G7. Then B flat minor, and then 5. That's just the verses. Now, in the bridge, I always wondered what was going on, because there's a lot going on in that production of really making this. So I really dug into it the other day, and it's just like he's moving down from a 3 chord to a 1 chord, and you can literally take it in basic triads. I tried to run far away, so it'd be like A minor, A flat major, G minor, G flat major, and then we get to F again. But the bass notes under that make it sound like this. But that's all over this, right? Oh, right. Or again. And then we're back to F for the G minor, and then F, and then D minor for a turn, back to that thing. And then we're a half step away from D minor, so let's go D minor, G7, and then B flat minor. I got into that this weekend, and I just almost flipped once I started seeing all of the different mathematical ways that related to itself. And it's just, I love Dennis's vocal on it. I think here's this tough jazz tune that I saw.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And he gets the vocal on it, and his double track is kind of sloppy. The production is trippy, like Adam said, but it's got those arpeggiated guitars. It's got an orchestra on it, and that last bit of the orchestra on the very end of the song. I saw a guy named Adam Marsland one time. On his podcast, I heard him describe it. He says it's almost like a trap door has opened and the orchestra is falling through the stage, and then at the very end they splinter into a bunch of pieces because it's da, 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 da. And I thought, wow, that's a good visual of what's going on there. We could go on and on about this, but do you have any thoughts?
It's like the double track, the sloppy double tracking, the lack of any background vocal.
Mm-hmm.
And like just kind of falls apart at the end. It's like we did some sessions with Asleep at the Wheel where it's like we ran out of time. The bus is on. It's like they turn on the bus outside the studio. You can hear the bus in the studio. It's like you have 10 minutes to finish this song. It's like, and whatever you get, that's what you get, because we're sending it in.
Yeah.
So that's what it was like to me. It was like, okay, we're done. And whereas, on Help Me Ronda, apparently Al was like, Brian's like, they're like, you got to get it tight. You got to get it right. And this one, like Dennis is probably going, I'm going to kick your ass if you make me do this again. I'm going to the bar. Here's your vocal. It's like, it's done. Mm-hmm. We're done with this record. I'm tired. Everyone's tired. Here's your song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That to me is kind of what happened. That's my image of what happened.
No, that's what. And what did you want to say about it?
It was
Adam?
just, I think this is the song that the good weed comes in for me. Like that's how I feel. This song is like, but yeah, I just this is one that you could listen to over and over again and just kind of hear different stuff.
it concludes the great music on this. Let's talk a little bit about the last thing, which is
yeah,
the bull session. And I know you hate those things.
I do not. I know. Yeah, that's how
Well,
I
I do
feel.
want to tell people a little bit about who the guy was. He was a reporter that had accompanied Earl Leaf. He's no relation to David Leaf, but he was an early reporter for those like teen set magazines, and so he accompanied them on their tour to Europe in 1964. And so he saw a lot of this stuff go on, and it was another gag piece from Brian. I think these are all Brian's ideas because he like that was even Smile was going to have some humor and dialogue in it, and Pet Sounds has got the dogs on the end of it. But I mean, I do think this one is a little bit different than like Sonny Wilson and Cassius Love and our favorite recording sessions, because it feels like they really are sitting around tongue in cheek and kind of and they're mature enough now to where they're pretty legit funny.
I guess my question is Dick Rising a real person?
That's
or is that because that feels like a prank call you would do as a kid or something?
That's you hear when Dick Rising, one of the greatest guys I ever met, and you hear Brian. I've actually heard the outtake from that, and they're joking. So I think you've hit on a joke there, because Brian says something to whatever. Yeah, you don't know that or something like that. I can't remember. But it, and the hamburgers and everything like that. After we get all this great music, there's another beautiful tune, a couple others that Brian had written during this time. One of them was "Guess I'm Dumb" that he gave to Glenn Campbell as a thank you for working with the Beach Boys. But that could have been on today. Instead of Bull Session with the Big Daddy. And there's another song called Sherry, She Needs Me, or Sandy, that they were working on at the time that could have been on this or something. But the bottom line is, they had material, but they chose to put this on there,
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Mr. Sanger.
Well, I hope we did okay. I hope we didn't, break any,
Only records on length of podcast. I think this will be our longest, but I think it's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's one that flew by for me anyway, sitting here.
And me too. It was a really engaging conversation, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
very much. Yeah.
Well, it's a good record.
Well, hey, buddy, we'll see. I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon, but take care, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Nice talking with you boys, and we'll catch you on the flip-flop.
Sounds
all right.
good. All
we'll
right.
see you.
Thanks, David.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Right. Okay, so that was our conversation with David Sanger on the Today album, and that was awesome, man. That was
wow.
That was so much more fun than he's a fun guy. He's just kind of he's got a great vibe and perfect person to have on the podcast. So good call to you to bring him in.
Well, I knew when I talked to him when I thought, oh wow, this guy's. He's into it.
Yeah, totally, totally. So that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, doing all that stuff. Don't forget that you can become a sponsor if you just go to MatthewHartzMusic.com/sponsor, and then all the stuff we talked about in the beginning of the podcast on sponsoring. And then next up is
Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Perfect. Okay, so we will see you next time.